All right. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Marissa Fay. I am a functional nutritionist based in Denver, Colorado, and I have the pleasure of working with the Chef Ann Foundation. And today I am joined by Mara Fleischman, the CEO, and we're going to chat a little bit more about what's happening related to school food and lunch and some of the CDC recommendations that came out recently, just in light of school starting back up already. So our first question that I have for you, Mara, is what's happening with school lunch this fall?
Oh boy, I'm sure that there's probably 200 ways to answer that depending on which district you're in. I think most parents understand the fluidity of schools right now, since they probably midsummer were told they had in-person or partially in-person classes, and then they were probably more recently told that some of it is online or most of it is online. So with every change that you are hearing about as a parent, school food has to accommodate those particular changes. And it's very different, so they have had to have plans for a continuation of remote feeding, like most of the schools and districts saw through the end of last school year, where they were distributing food through multiple sites outside while schools were totally virtual. Then there was an option for kids coming back to school, and the guidance from the CDC on that was to try and lower risk by lowering volume of congregant areas. So a lot of districts were trying to plan for in-classroom feeding, which carried its own operational stressors. And I think some districts were planning on going back to school and feeding within the cafeteria, but in a reduced capacity, meaning that they had to create more lunch times to have fewer kids in the lunch area at one time, how to keep 6 feet apart, how to take out things that caused issues like salad bars. So right now, as most districts are going back to school in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I think pretty much that each district has set their plan, at least for the first 2 months of school. For where I am in Boulder Valley School District, it is online, it is virtual. So our district is going back to remote feeding through 6 sites, and it will be a grab and go pickup.
Mm. Do we know about how that's impacting access yet?
Yeah, so SNA did come out with a report around the impacts of feeding during COVID, at least during the last 3 months of the school year last year. It was a little bit more about how they're processing kids through the system based on the waivers that are coming in through the federal government, through the USDA, who was taking advantage of school lunches versus a lot of the PEBT credits, which were being added to SNAP benefits. But I think in general, what has happened is that the rapid increase of unemployment in areas has the flow of application for free and reduced lunches has not been able to catch up with the unemployment rates yet. So that's the part that worries me from the Chef Ann Foundation perspective. Through the summer feeding initiative, it was guided through different summer programs, Seamless Summer, and the accounting for meals was less restrictive than it will be now as we move into a regular lunch program. So making sure that everyone in your community that needs it is registered for the free and reduced lunch program is really paramount, but also that your school food program has a really adequate marketing strategy to let the community know where the distribution sites are, what time it's going to be open, how to pick it up, that kind of thing. And a lot of school food programs are just they're not well versed in that marketing initiative, using all of the social media channels. Here and in some regions, in some districts, there's text alerts plus email alerts plus voicemail alerts. That is probably the most significant thing you can do to increase access.
Mm-hmm. So we know that kind of this grab and go lunch setup is impacting access. I'm really curious from the Chef Ann perspective, given all the work that we do around made from scratch food and healthy food, how do you think shifting to mostly this grab and go type structure is going to impact the quality of the food, the kind of made from scratch philosophy? What do you think is going to be different?
Well, I think that's what I'm really concerned about. I think what we saw, and believe me, I'm not judging the school food teams right now when I say this, because their job has been unbelievably difficult. But what we saw in March through May, as schools started to shut down and remote feeding sites started to go up, is that we saw a lot of processed packaged food going into grab and go bags. Students were coming in and they were getting, because of efficiencies and labor, they were packing multiple breakfasts, multiple lunch, multiple dinners in single grab and go sacks. And it's really hard to change your whole approach to food to make it in a grab and go way. So even districts that were doing considerable scratch cooking had to modify what they were doing. I think for me, that was, we were all kind of doing it was a complete scramble, In many cases, school districts had less than 48 hours, their school food teams, to pivot and turn and move on a dime to have remote feeding. So I understand it, but now we kind of know the reality of the situation. In some way, your food service program is going to be compromised over the next 12 months. And I think now's the time we have to stop focusing on just meeting, calorie requirements and start remembering that we have to focus on the health and freshness of the food that we're delivering. There's a huge equity issue here. Right now, particularly if schools are remote, the kids who purchase lunch are probably not going to the remote feeding sites to get lunch. So it's almost 100% kids who are on the free and reduced lunch program. And, it's not just about filling their bellies. There has to be equity here. And we have to think about the quality of the meal that we're serving them. There's so many things that go into it, and it's going to be difficult, but that's what the Chef Ann Foundation is focused on now. So we're working with our new director of school food operations, Brandy Dreblis, to come up with categories that school food teams can look at, creating fresher scratch cooked meals, and then look at how to package them for remote packaging and transportation for remote distribution. It's time. We have more time to plan now, and it's time to get back to focusing more on better, healthier, fresher food.
That sounds like something hugely valuable. Do you know when, resources on that are going to be pushed out by Chef Ann Foundation?
Yeah, so we're working on it. I would say sometime in October, we're going to have the first iteration of it, and we're going to continue to add to it. So not just working with Brandy, but with our advisory board. We have, I think, 9 food service directors on our advisory board that work in districts across the country. They're all committed to fresh, healthy food. So they're going to probably be exploring different options. I think what really is happening now is that if you cooked from scratch, you're having to think about not just what you cook, but how are you going to package it for single serve, for a grab and go bag? How are you going to transport it now to distribution sites where they're serving outside? How are you going to keep it to temp? And how are you going to package it with other meals, breakfasts, dinners? So I think what we're going to try and do is show different menu cycles where you can, I think it's going to be rare that everything will be 100% scratch cooked. It's rare when everything is perfect in operational land in school food. But now it's going to be a little bit more challenging. But how can we modify the menus to have some scratch cooked items in there as they go, and particularly have fresh fruit and vegetables, because with salad bars gone, fresh fruit and vegetable access is going to be very limited. And we already know that fresh fruit and vegetable access in lower income communities, and particularly food desert areas, is a challenge. And it's one of the most important things in supporting the health of children.
So you said, and people may know or not know this, so just so we're all on the same page, why are salad bars eliminated right now?
So, as far as I know, I'm not 100% sure if there has been federal guidance coming down on elimination of salad bars, although there might have been. But most school districts are opting to. I think that was the guidance. Excuse me. The guidance was that there are no bars, not just in schools, but in retail locations too. So, when you go into your supermarket, you probably see all of the salad bars or the hot bars, hot food service bars, all shut down. So that's what's going on now, is that salad bars are going to be out of commission this whole school year, and it could be much longer. And the sad part about that is that the research really does show that salad bars increase the purchase of fresh fruits and vegetables for a school food program twofold at least. So we have to figure out other ways to ensure that these kids are getting fresh fruits and vegetables, because a lot of times they're not getting them at home.
Mm-hmm. I wonder how this kind of quick shift that schools have had to make has impacted them from like a contract standpoint and a financial standpoint, just because I work with parents and families too, and with the Chef Ann Foundation, and I think sometimes we don't always understand, the whole food system that schools are a part of. And I'm curious if you've heard from any of the schools that Chef Ann Foundation partners with about how it's impacting that, that whole system and that whole pipeline of how they were getting, the foods that they were cooking with, that they were serving to their school communities.
Well, I think that there has been a lot of cracks that have been exposed in our food system nationwide. Distribution and has been a big one. I mean, I think even if you guys look on your grocery shelves, you're like, oh, there's no tuna fish, or there's no, what happened to all of the organic strawberries, or, just those random things that you usually see that are not there. And that a lot of that has to do with the distribution and supply chain that had issues because of COVID. Now with school food, one of the big issues is that they have to order well in advance of the school year, so they're ordering 6 months in advance. So it's very hard for them to plan for multiple feeding solutions and potentially menu change outs that could accommodate multiple menu changes or multiple feeding solutions when they have to order so far in advance. So that's a huge thing that we're seeing 100%, that they're having to kind of flex, and they're having to deal with orders that they've placed and try and use what they have. So if you're a more experienced culinarian in school food, you're able to kind of think about generally what you can order, and when it comes in, how you can cook it, feed it, process it, into healthy school meals. If you're more of a administrator, which a lot of times that is the people who head up school food programs, and it's a little bit more difficult, in how you're trying to figure that out. So I think that is a big challenge, is the lead time they have in procurement.
Mm-hmm. So it's almost like, our school food professionals right now are actually thinking about January, because they've had to already think about what's happening this fall.
Yeah, it is. And it's always an issue that the orders have to be so far in advance. You know, I mean, the menu planning and that kind of thing. And right now, with the uncertainty of the operations, it's even more challenged.
Yeah. I think that's something really important for, families and parents and people who have kiddos in their lives to really take in, that like there might be some things that happen this fall that they're not, as pleased with as far as the health and quality of the food, and to know that they can't necessarily impact what's happening right now, but they can impact, what might happen in the future. And so that leads me into my question of what can, parents, families, community members who are interested and want to support this, and what can they be doing to ensure that school lunches are at least as healthy as they can be in this new setup?
Yeah, those are good questions and questions we get here. I mean, first off, what I would say is check in with your school district to see if there's any volunteer opportunities. A lot of times you cannot volunteer within the food distribution component of school food, but there might be marketing or processing, paperwork processing, volunteer opportunities. So, you know, they can use at times all the help they can get. I think the other thing is helping your community, making sure that your community is aware of the remote feeding program. So, you know, if you notice that your school district is is not, it takes a long time to even find where to go to the remote feeding sites to figure out, call your district, send an email, let them know, hey, it would be great if you could put this on this social media channel, or reach out to, there's a moms group in this community, if you could post it to that, or, I could post it, I could help you, could help you figure that out, because the more people that participate in the program, the more funding the program has, and that means the healthier food there is to have it as an option, because that's really, that's really how it works in school food. And with if schools are almost 100% virtual now, then they really are probably not attracting the students who paid for their school lunch last year, which means that their program is going to be running potentially at a deficit. And what you want to do is try and help them thrive as much as possible, so that they have more money to spend on higher quality food. I just see this is going to be a challenge for a while. So one of the other things that is happening nationally is there's a big push for universal free meals.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to make sure people understand why this is so important. So one, I explained, so let me use Boulder Valley as an example. Boulder Valley has just about 18 to 20% of their kids are on the free and reduced lunch program. So the rest of the people who buy lunch on a regular day pay for their lunch, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how they're able to get more volume, higher quality food into the program. Now they are going to be having to rely on, because we're completely remote, so they're likely going to have, because they just paid students aren't going to go down to the remote sites and pay for a meal and get it, because they're at home, their parents are probably cooking them a meal. So they're going to have to rely only on the funding coming in for the free and reduced lunch students. And even as we go back to in-person learning, there is going to be a hesitance for parents to send their kids and purchase lunch.
Mm-hmm.
There shouldn't be. I mean, the regulations are going to be followed. The food is going to be, it's going to be, the protocols are going to be there. The food is going to be safe and healthy, but they will. We just know it. So we're going to be in a situation where a district who was getting a lot of funding from students who paid for lunch are no longer going to be. And we have this real bump in unemployment, which means that we have more and more families that need school food. In addition to that, I think if you've heard about the lunch debt issues that were happening in 2019, so you were hearing about, this huge amount of lunch debt in a district and what's happening. And a lot of that is because there's this marginalized group of families that aren't supported by the free and reduced lunch program, but don't necessarily earn enough
Mhm.
to make it easy for them to support their kids in lunch. The free and reduced lunch program supports kids who come from families of four who earn less than $44,000 a year.
Mhm.
I mean, and it depends on where you are, but I would say, as an example, here in Boulder County, it, it's hard to live here and feed your family if you make anywhere from $60,000 a year or less. So
Mhm.
where does that put people? So we have all of these people that need school lunch, and it's time to look at universal free lunch. And that's a bill that is trying to get pushed right now through the federal administration. So as you hear about it, check in with the Chef Ann Foundation. We will be putting links to have people support petitions, sign on to reach out to their legislators to support this kind of advocacy.
Can you tell us a little bit more? I think it's inferred, but what exactly is universal free lunch?
Yeah. So universal free lunch is just how it sounds,
Yeah.
but it is that every child in every school will have access to a free lunch.
Mm.
And this alleviates a lot of the inequity, I think, that comes with, potentially not having enough money for lunch and showing up for lunch and building school lunch debt. It also better funds school food programs so that they have more money to purchase healthier food. I mean, as it is, the reimbursement rate for a school lunch is on average $3.30, right?
Mhm.
And if you break that down by labor and administration and food costs, they have maybe $1.20 to spend on food cost. That's not a lot. They're not dealing with a lot. Think about what you can buy for $1.20, to provide a healthy lunch for your kids. So the volume purchasing helps, and it helps provide better school food. But allowing these districts to offer free meals to all their students, particularly now, I think is something that we have to do. I think what we saw is that school food is not just a nice to have. I think a lot of people thought, oh, great, school food, school lunch. It's great that they have that access.
Mhm.
22 million kids in our country rely on school food every day. And we saw that when schools shut down. We saw that they were in jeopardy of not being fed.
Mhm.
So I think we have to think about it more critically.
Yeah. I really like the idea of universal school lunch because, kind of as you mentioned, these people who are not quite qualifying right now, but it's a stretch for them. I think a lot of times processed foods are either easier to access because of how close the nearest grocery store or market is for someone, but also because they're often cheap. And so we don't always know if those kids are getting, fresh fruits and vegetables and just less processed foods that we know are so important for, healthy growth and also the ability to focus and brain health and all of that. And so if we do universal lunch and we have groups like Chef Ann able to come in and really work with schools to, do as much as they can from scratch and bring as many healthy ingredients into the mix, then we know all of our kids are going to have this baseline of these fresh foods in their diet. And that is just an amazing thing that we can be doing for our youth.
Yeah, well, this is your area of expertise, but
Yeah.
you're right. I mean, ultra processed food is just going through the roof in our country.
Mhm.
On average, I think kids eat fast food 3 times a week or something. And, the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act of 2010, which was, the first ever really strong nutritional guidelines for school food. It reduced sodium, it reduced saturated fat, it increased whole grains, and it was monumentous. And I'm so grateful, for teams that spearheaded that, particularly Michelle Obama, who really was a champion of that. But that was the first step, because what happened is big food companies just rejiggered their processed food to meet those guidelines. And it's not all just about the nutritional analysis of a food item, right? You know that. So there's a piece of it that's about fiber, right? So fiber is not in there in that whole nutritional analysis, and highly processed food just has far less fiber. And then your palate starts to become accustomed to highly processed food, and you're building the habits of little kids, bad habits for their future.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, say it again, right? I feel like this is a good opportunity for me to slip in because you're right. This is something I talk a lot about. And also with the Chef Ann Foundation, we have a Facebook group for parents and families. It's called Healthy Kids, or Healthy Foods, Healthy Kids Colorado. But if you want to have more information about this part of the conversation, you can join us there. So with that, Mara, any last kernels that you want to make sure parents, families, communities kind of can take away from this conversation, or anything we didn't talk about that's important?
I think that I think that our country, our world is at a real crossroads right now, and I think school food exposes a lot of the issues that we're seeing in a larger scale. So, food systems issues. I worked at Whole Foods Market for 13 years before I joined the Chef Ann Foundation 8 years ago, because I really believe in the value of producing healthier food, what that does to the planet, what that does for the body. But when you're serving 30 million meals a day to kids, we have to focus on institutional food when we look at food system issues for health of people and health of the planet. And I know this is top of mind for everyone. It's a huge thing right now. So what I would say is, we're in a place right now where school food teams are trying to do the best they can. Chef Ann Foundation is going to be here for them. If they want to do their best in serving the healthiest school food they can, we are going to be here with resources, tools, fundings, and grants. As school food progresses, as time progresses, and we move out of this pandemic, parent groups have done a lot to try and change school food in their communities. You have to do it in a way where you are working with your district and not telling your district what to do. And the best first step in that, from my perspective, is educating yourself about school food. Educate yourself. Figure out how the school food system works, figure out how the national reimbursement works, figure out how your particular district is creating foods. Do they have equipment where they're cooking? Are they just reheating? Before you start asking for anything or start going in and talking, really dig in deep and figure out what's going on.
And of course, Chef Ann Foundation has a bunch of free resources and links to all of those things. So you don't have to do it alone and you don't have to use, a search engine. Chef Ann has curated a number of these resources to help you be up to speed on these pieces. I also think it's great to leave folks on a little bit of a positive note. And Mara, I know you're a parent and you've been involved with your kids' schools around, food lunch. And so you're also seeing this from that space, like probably many people watching this. Are there any kind of silver linings that you're seeing right now?
Yeah, for me, the biggest silver lining is that there is a large advocacy group, Chef Ann Foundation being part of it, that is pushing universal free meals in school food. And we might get it done right now. And there has never been that opportunity in the past. And that would really free school districts up financially to better serve higher quality food. And it also would ensure that kids who need school food get it. So that's the silver lining for me, is that we're at a time right now where it potentially is possible.
Yeah, so cool. So tell us one more time, what can parents do related to helping universal school meals get pushed through and making that happen?
So first, just you can follow the Chef Ann Foundation site, and we will let you know. Right now, it's kind of in the process of discussions amongst legislators. So we're not ready for the community push yet, but hopefully we will be soon. So sign up for our newsletter is the best thing you can do, because you will be notified. Follow us on social media, because that's even a quicker way to be notified. And then once we hopefully, once it gets to the point where we're asking for some more outside support, then we'll be posting things, and it's going to come soon. So make sure you sign up quickly so you can be part of that.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Mara. Everyone watching, we hope that you learned something new, could pull a kernel away from today. And of course, we love hearing from you. So you can always reach us on social media at the Chef Ann Foundation. And of course, our website with all of those resources to just continue the conversation. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.